Today, we're going to dive into one of the most popular questions I'm getting right now from my buyers and my realtor partners. When will rates go down? And from my clients, should I buy or wait until after the election? What happens with interest rates after an election? We've got a lot going on, but we're going to go into it from a Federal Reserve data standpoint to dispel the myth being thrown out by the doomsday bros so that you can make an educated decision empowered by data rather than just videos with no substantiation of what's being talked about. So let's dive into it, and I'm going to share some charts with you, and in the description you're going to see the links to those charts so that you can decide along the way, should you buy a house in Denver in 2024 or not. As we move through this, if you have comments or questions or thoughts relating to any of these charts, put them below and I'll get back to you with answers. You can always schedule a consultation at calendly.com/mortgage maestro. Here we go. Let's dive in. First, we're going to talk about what happens with interest rates after the election. So the key years you want to think about are 2020. You can see here that rates actually went up substantially, but that was COVID. So an interesting phenomenon after the 2021 period where rates did go up. Initially, yes, they did drop, but is that an outlier because of COVID? So go back to 2016. If you follow this chart, you'll follow along and see that rates went up. That's two different administrations, everybody. So will rates go up or not based off the administration? Go back to 2012, rates up. 2008, down, housing crisis. Again, have to think about that and what impact did that have or did it not have on interest rates coming out of this recession. You can see through the gray band right there. From there, we're going back to 2004. From there, you can see that rates went up after this election in 2004. 1996, rates slightly flat and a little bit down leading into the late 90s. Further back than this, 1992, rates did go down immediately following the election, but not for long, and then they went higher within a year later. In all of these, you can see the recessionary periods, and then let's talk about what does that mean for home prices for you to decide. Well, the gray bands along the way are going to show you the recessions over time. We see the blip from COVID. We see all the recessions back into the double recession at the beginning of the 80s. The curious thing here, guys, home prices have done one thing in Denver following all recessions, except for 2008. But it only took 3 years after 2008's recession before home prices in Denver were higher than they were at the peak before the housing crisis. So there is that to take into consideration, because if you decide to wait to buy, and if you're waiting, say, for rates to come to 5%, because someone in my industry was talking about 5% will happen last May, then go back to the history of interest rates and see that, follow that line along there to see how long do you think it will take you to achieve a 2% rate drop for you to decide to buy a house. But then what will it mean for home prices when you do go to buy a house? As an example, in Denver, 4.55% is the average annual appreciation. So if you waited for 5 years, you're about 25% higher in cost going off historical values. If that rate went from 7 to 5, do the math to discern how much more the house is going to actually cost you. But if you lost over 25% in value, $100,000 of equity gain from waiting that out to get that magical rate to make quote unquote housing more affordable. Something to think about. Should you buy, should you not, as you go through this cycle of deciding? Again, drop questions along the way. From there, we're going to look at the myth of rising inventory, because everyone's saying this housing market is collapsing, values are coming down. Ray, I'm seeing price reductions. Well, if I'm selling a house right now, I've got to think about a few things based on the advice of my agent. Is my house sexy and showing out? Meaning, is it shining on the market? With rising inventory, look at this chart here. When does inventory rise historically? Take a look, good look. It rises at this time of year on lock. After that, in the fall, when it dips, there's less homes on the market, and therefore it may give the appearance of price reductions because of inventory right now. But houses in this market in Denver right now that are shining are not setting very long. The days on market is very low for those homes. There are even multiple offers on those homes. The houses that have the deferred maintenance and are not priced right are actually houses that are not selling for what they're listed for, giving off the appearance that home prices are going down. But you got to connect all the dots. Let's connect some dots from Redfin. Redfin's showing year over year in the Denver housing market, actual gains 9.3%. But let's step back, because when did rates surge? It was in 2022. So home prices took a hit, as you'll see here, but then they've kind of been rebounding back. High rates through 2024, but home prices coming back up. So we're nearing those high watermarks of home prices in the Denver area from back in 22 before rates surged. So we've got this big phenomenon going on with the Fed. And what are they going to do? There's never been a point in history where 4 months prior to an election that they have dropped the rates. Now, keep in mind that interest rate is not what drives mortgage rates. I don't care what anybody tells you. Maybe some relationship to it, but the Fed funds rate is not mortgage rates. So keep that in mind. Do a Google on it. You'll get the AI feed on what that means. We're going to wind down here. We're going to talk about this right here, because you got to understand one thing, the dynamics at play. If Blackstone makes a $10 billion cash investment to buy multifamily properties, this might be directed at my friends that are in Gen Z, are they anticipating more of a nation of renters, and they're going to bank on this because of high inflation and the history of this debt? That's something to contemplate, y'all, because if the home prices continue to go up in Denver and you just move into an apartment and you're going to wait it out and you're going to wait for home prices to drop and you're going to wait for rates to drop, that may work for you depending on your life situation. Take this information today, think about it, and as not my friend, but Adam Grant would say, think again in his book, think about both sides. So if you're doom scrolling about all this with real estate, get educated on the opposite side of the argument or conversation so that you can decide what's right for you. There are some amazing videos. I've created a home buyer series here, whether you're a first-time buyer or this is your fifth home. These are current educational videos that I would invite you to watch that series. Comment questions below. If you find value in this, let's get a subscribe. We're going to keep this going with timely information about the real estate market in Denver, Colorado.